Good day, students. I would like to take you through the examination-based conduct class 2018. At the same time, I would also like to welcome you, students of IOL. The scope of the examination-based conduct class will start with the introduction, the aims of the conduct class, the structured examination paper and assessment, the course outline, and the conclusion. A short, brief introduction about myself. Taita Shikongo, the tutor. The qualification is the BTEC Forensic Investigation, Certificate in Forensic Audit, Fingerprint Expert in India, and attend various special training courses. I'm a member of the previously working in the Namibian Police, the PricewaterhouseCoopers, currently at Financial Intelligence Center. The aims of the conduct class is to prepare students for examination, best possible chance to do well in your exam, provide a framework for preparation, continuous assessment, calculation marks, the question paper structured, how the marks are allocated, questions, how to answer your questions. The continuous assessment calculation marks is based as continuous assessment per the module consists of one assignment of 120 marks for modules of 12 credits. A 50% continuous assessment mark is required for admission to the examination. The duration of the examination for 12 credits is 2.5 hour written examination of 120 marks. A final pass mark of 50% is required, calculated by 60% of the examination mark and a 40% of a continuous assessment mark. A sub-minimum of 50% must be attained in the examination. For example, suppose the assignment continues. The assessment mark is 50%. Examination mark is also 50. A 50% of 50 is a 20%, which is divided by a 50 times 40 divided by 100. A 60% of 50 is 30, which is a 50 times 60 divided by 100. Then your final mark will be a 50%. The setting and marking of the examination papers are moderated. This is how the exam is structured. The examination will consist of 4 questions. Question 1 will be having 60 marks. Question 2, 36. Question 3 and 4 will have 12 points each, a total of 120. Guidelines of investigation and the importance of a witness statement. The purpose of criminal investigation is to gather facts and other information for examination. Secondly, to determine whether a crime has been committed, and if there is a violation, the identity of the perpetrator. To collect, preserve, and preparation of evidence that will be admissible and effective in or before a court of law. Importance of witness statements continues. Available to refresh the witness memory when testifying in court, gives direction to the testimony of the witness in court, able to submit a proper document which is normally quality checked when the witness is an expert, enhance production due to the fact that such statement could be a prima facie evidence and the expert witness doesn't have to appear in court, enhance the court process as the statement needs to be submitted to the defense 40 days before the court date. It also provides direction regarding the chain of custody as per Article 212, Section 8, subparagraph A of the CPA Criminal Procedure Act, relevant to the information is recorded. Relevant information is recorded. It could be utilized at any time during the investigation process. Evidence and the meaning. Evidence is anything that is properly admissible in court and that will aid the functions of criminal proceeding in establishing guilt or the innocence. Evidence is the means by which facts are proven in lawsuits. Summary on what evidence means. Evidence includes written material such as contracts, deeds, verbal testimonies, and objects such as guns, knives, which a court can allow in determining if something disputed in court is a fact. Evidence includes all the means by which the truth of alleged fact is submitted to scrutiny. Evidence is the means of providing proof of something and may be given orally, in writing, by means of documents, or through objects, real evidence. Evidence and the different such methods, different forms of evidence, why proper collection. Oral evidence. Evidence is usually presented orally under oath in the presence of the public and the parties to the case and is subject to examination. Real evidence. Real evidence consists of things which can be examined by the court as means of proof. Real evidence refers to those exhibits which are shown in court, for example, a bloodstain, murder weapon, or stolen goods. Computer-generated evidence. Computer printouts are copies of original documents which are stored in electronic form on a desk and is sometimes the best available evidence. Video and audio recordings. It was held in State versus Regboni, 1986, paragraph number 4, a court held in South Africa under section 117, subparagraph 17, that there is no difference between video and audio tapes. And it was also decided that both of these tapes are documentary evidence. In State versus Bulo, 1896, paragraph 3, South Africa, paragraph 485, subparagraph E, the court rules that video films is not a document and that video and tape recording constitute real evidence. Photographs and films. Photographs and films may be documentary or real evidence. When they are presented because they were stolen, they are real evidence. When a photograph is presented to prove that what was recorded by the camera, it can amount to documentary evidence. Different search methods. We have wheel method. In this type of method, the center of the crime scene, for example, a cop, is the starting point. Different officials are placed in each portion of the circle, and they start searching from the center outwards. This method can be used in a large open spaces. Spiral method. In this method, the investigating officer will start his search from the outside and work his way to the center of the crime scene. This can also be conducted by several searchers simultaneously. This method can be used in small areas. The zone method. In this method, the crime scene is divided into zones, and each zone gets a searcher who will do his own investigation in his zone. After they are finished, they can move to a different block. This method is used inside houses. A strap method. In this method, the search area is divided into strips, and each strip is searched by the investigator. This can be done by one or two searchers. This method can be used both inside or outside in a house. A roster method. This method is the same as strap method, but differs in that horizontal as well as vertical strips are used to search the area. This method can be used both indoors and outdoors. The crime scene officer and the chain of custody during collection of evidence. The duties of the crime scene officer upon arrival at the crime scene. The crime scene officer should stop and carefully observe the entire scene before anything else. It is not enough to just gather the evidence from the scene. The crime scene officer has to evaluate what the evidence is telling him. The crime scene officer must always remember to maintain the chain of custody from the time it was found until it is presented to court. A scene of crime management evidence collection sheet must be completed. Who found the evidence, who collected it, and who processed it? All these questions must be answered and documented. Preliminary survey. The crime scene officer must initiate a preliminary survey, a walkthrough of the crime scene, make observation about how the crime was committed and the types of evidence most likely to be found. Once the walkthrough is completed, the crime scene officer will know what they are dealing with. The functions of the crime scene officer is to determine expert personnel and equipment to reconstruct the crime scene, identify and protect the transient evidence. Consider whether evidence appeared to be moved. Prepare narrative condition of the incident scene. What should be present, what is not observed, and what is out of place. Consider situational factors such as doors open or whether it was locked, the windows, whether it was open or closed, the smell, odor, and temperatures. Identification of potential collection point for important evidence. Prevent contamination, hands in pockets. During the collection, the process followed by photographer is imperative. Describe. First, get out the camera and take pictures. The initial picture should be overall views of the scene and evidence. This should be representation of the scene in its pristine state, without markers, giving a comprehensive view of the scene. Next, narrow the scope of the pictures to specific areas. Use markers to show the orientation of items in relation to each other. A frame marker, placards, survey markers may be used depending on the location and size of evidence. The final set of photos should be close-ups. Close-up photos should include a scale and a frame marker, which will correspond with the item numbered used on evidence custody sheet. When the crime scene officer photographs the scene, enough photographs must be taken. It is not unusual to take 200 to 400 photos of a major crime scene, and with each digital camera, there is no reason not to take as many photos as needed. On the other hand, don't take pictures just to take pictures. Make sure photos are taken of things that are relevant to the case. Documenting of evidence. While finding evidence, it is important. Documenting it is also essential. In order to do the right, the crime scene officer needs to photograph the scene, use scale or other markers with photographs, collect the evidence, and then record the information about the evidence on the evidence custody sheet. The chain of custody form. The chain of custody, the final method of evidence documented, is the chain of custody form. The chain of custody form is written records of all evidence transfers from the crime scene to possession of the court or the clerk of court. Proper chain of custody thoroughly documents the movement of evidence, the security of the evidence, who has possession of the evidence, and when the evidence was in a person's possession. The chain of custody form. The chain of custody form must accompany the evidence all the way to its final destination. A copy should also be kept in the case folder. Think of the chain of custody as a chain. If one link should be broken, the chain is broken and the evidence collected may be ruled as inadmissible. The details that should be listed on the chain of custody form: a description of evidence and its container, the specific recovery location of the evidence, a case number, date and time it was collected, who collected it, whether or not evidence container was sealed upon transfer or another individual, who received the evidence, the date and times of evidence transfer, who delivered the evidence, the final disposition of the evidence. The chain of custody form, working with exhibits, limit the number of individuals handling evidence. Confirm that all names, identification numbers, dates are listed on the chain of custody documents. Ensure that all evidence packaging is properly sealed and marked prior to submission. Obtain signed or otherwise secure receipts upon transfer of evidence. Packaging and handling of evidence. Keep the chain of custody short. When processing crime scenes, you will encounter many different types of evidence. Carefully collect the identified items and then place them in an appropriate package to be sent to the laboratory. Label each package with the proper case number and keep a clear record of all the steps performed. Fewer people who handle the evidence, the fewer people have to go to court to testify. Packaging of different kinds of evidence. Small items should be carefully packaged or they should be lost. Small items such as hair and fibers on clean papers or in a clean envelope and then place them in a large envelope. Once this kind of evidence are safely stored in the appropriate envelope, the envelope can be properly sealed and labeled. Large items like pillows and comforters should be placed in paper bags or wrapped in brown craft papers. Of course, some items like cars, SUVs, or even stereos, TVs and computers are too large to package, but they still need to be documented or properly labeled. Firearms, you must first make sure that weapons is unloaded, cleared and safe. The firearm should be packaged in a box specifically designed to hold weapons in place. The outside package label must indicate that the weapon has been cleared. If the weapon has blood or tissue, mark the package with biohazard label. Firearms, this label is important because it will alert the lab to safety issues and will also indicate that biological testing need to be done before ballistic testing. Also remember that the ammunition from the firearm should be packaged separately. Wet items, such as bloody clothing, must first be air dried or placed in a breathable packaging material or they will mold. To dry bloody clothing, collect it from the scene and place it in a paper bag to transport it to your station. At the station, hang up the clothing and let it dry. While it's drying, place white paper bags under the clothing to collect any trace evidence that falls. Be sure to retain the transport bag and white paper bags as evidence. Arson cases, arson evidence. It also requires special packaging. For this type of evidence, packaging that will prevent fibers from escaping is needed. Use either clean, unused metal paint cans or heat-sealed nylon arson bags. Do not use traditional fiber barrier bags. It is made of oil-based products that will re-interact with any accelerants that might be present in the evidence. Steps in handling of evidence after it has been recognized. Number 1, protection, assembled degradation of biological contamination, documentation, collection, packaging and marking, preservation before a delivery to laboratory and in a laboratory, identification, comparison, individualization, deposition, reconstruction, and etc. Investigative interview. Investigation. Investigation can be defined as discovery of relevant facts, the making of inference from these facts, the reconstruction of the scene of incident, the identification and apprehension of the offender, and the preparation of a case for the prosecution and trial of the suspects. Investigation also refers to the activity directed to the identification and apprehension of alleged criminals and the accumulation and preservation of evidence regarding the alleged crimes. Interview. The interview of witnesses and suspects is the main function of investigators because it is by the method of interviewing the investigator can gather the needed information to prove the crime or the incident from people. To interview is to walk, to talk to people and question them to gather specific information. Example, use your own words. Interrogation. When there is no willingness, the situation changes, and the process is referred to as interrogation. Interrogation refers to the conversation between the interrogator and the suspect, during which the suspect is accused of involvement in a particular incident or a group of incidents. For example, again, use your own words. Investigative interviewing. The characteristic of an interview, non-accusatory. The purpose is to gather information, may be conducted early during the investigation, may be conducted in a variety of environments, is free-flowing and relatively unstructured. The investigator should take written or written notes during a formal interview. Accusatory, involving active persuasion. The purpose is to learn the truth. Conducted in a controlled environment. Only conducted when the investigator is reasonably certain of the suspect's guilt. The investigator should take any notes until after the suspect has told the truth and fully committed to that position. Admission. An admission is a statement or action that is inconsistent with the position he or she is currently taking or defending at trial. An admission of any statement or conduct from which guilt of the crime may be inferred, but guilt does not necessarily allow. Some, not all elements admitted. Magistrate judge enter a plea of not guilty. State to prove the elements. Confession. A confession is a statement admitting or acknowledge all the facts necessary for conviction of the crime at issue. refer to Section 270 of the Criminal Procedure Act 51 of 1997, handles the admissibility of confession by accused persons. Always try and gather the evidence in respective of the existence of the confession or admission. Preparation for an interview. The golden rules for the investigator is investigating officer should, whenever possible, follow the dictum, investigate the interview rather than the interview the investigate. This means that the interviewer should be familiar with all the facts of the case and be well prepared before the interview. If the interviewer prepares for the interview in advance, obtaining all necessary information, communication with the interview will be in his or her favor. With information gathered as a result of proper preparation, the interviewer should be able to visualize in his or her mind an eye-accurate picture of what has happened. Objective investigative interviewing. Identification of the crime committed, gathering of evidence to prove the crime under investigation, individualize the crime, arrest the suspect, retrieving stolen property. Interview techniques. Cognitive interviewing technique. Report everything. The victim or witness is informed not to omit any details, no matter how small. The interviewer explained that every minor piece of information may be important to the investigation. Mental reinstatement of context. The interviewer begins by asking the witness to reconstruct how the evidence began and the circumstances surrounding it. The interviewer instructs the witness to think about what the environment looked like, from the weather to lighting to the cleanliness of the room. The recalling of events in a variety of different order. The interviewer may instruct the eyewitness to start from the middle or end and move either forward or backwards through the story at a number of different points. The change perspective technique. Ask the witness to change the roles with another person in the incident and to consider what he or she might have seen. Ask them to mentally change their position and ask what they might have seen from their location. Ultimate objects techniques as an interviewing technique. The only aim of the technique is to get a confession. The technique requires patience from the interviewer and the ability to repeat the same question over and over. The aim of the technique is to send message to the suspect and that only the truth will satisfy the interviewer. These techniques normally work with the emotional and sensitive persons. The questions that will assist the investigator as an interviewer when he prepared to obtain information on a victim. Did the victim know the perpetrator? If so, what is the relationship between them? Does the victim suspect any person? Why? Has the victim previously been involved in crime, or has he or she been reporting crimes in the past? Did the victim have a weapon? Does the victim have an aggressive personality? What is the license number and description of the victim's car? What is the victim? Was the victim mistaken for someone else? The importance of the investigator, knowledge of the crime scene and circumstances surrounding the crime committed. It is important to gather the following information if the victims are companies or institutions. Find out about their attitudes and practice towards their employees and the public. What is the company financial status? Is there insurance against losses, and etc.? Any practice that could make the organization an object for criminals. It is important for the investigator to know and understand, as far as possible in the relationship to the crime, how, when, where, why, who, and what specific crime was committed. This will enable him to formulate the right questions to prove or disprove the commission of the crime and accordingly link or eliminate the subjects. In conclusion, few tips for the examination. Framework of exam. Investigation requires that you know and understand all concept techniques. 1 fact, 1 mark. Mark allocation. Number your facts. Bullet points. Avoid dumping relevant or irrelevant facts simultaneously. Marker searching for the correct answer. Follow the instructions closely. Use your best handwriting. And I wish you all the best for your preparation for the exam. Thank you very much. My contact details and my email address for any inquiry.